crisis brought such a steady stream of big names to Flint. We had Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, certainly officials from Lansing, from the EPA, but they flew in and out of Flint. They were not living day in and day out with water that was poison. We want to talk about what that has been like with two different outcomes. One family stayed and one family made the tough choice to leave Flint. Laura McIntyre and her family are here despite damage to their home and appliances and worries about their health. And Camryn Banks' parents saw changes in their kids' health, and when the door opened for her dad to attend grad school in Ann Arbor, they decided to head south on US 23 and make a new home in Ann Arbor. Camryn Banks and Laura McIntyre, welcome to Stateside. Great to have you both with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Laura, I know we have talked to you on Stateside in the past about the water bills you were paying, and then the last time that we talked earlier this year, you decided to withhold payment. Where are things today with that?
Yeah, we're still withholding payment. Our bills are approximately $200 a month for water that we really can't use. And right now we are on the shutoff list, and we're getting increasingly aggressive and outright abusive letters from the city in terms of trying to cajole us into paying for water.
And I know you I want you to kind of recap for us. When we talked before, you kind of spelled out the effects that water has had just in your home and on your family.
Well, for my home, my home is pretty much destroyed. We have the pipes have disintegrated in the walls. The water streams down the walls. It's pretty much a wash. I do live in Mott Park, and it's an older home. At this point, it would take more to replace the pipes and put in a filtration system than the home is actually worth. We're just going to have to walk away from it at this point. Plus, anything that the water has touched, any appliances, we're on our third or fourth washing machine. It's just disgusting. The water's terrible.
How about health?
Our health, we've been lucky to have been cognizant of the water problems, and we're actually with groups fighting the emergency manager system and fighting the high increases in water, so we were well aware that there was a problem with the water even before it made the media. So we've been using bottled water and filtered water since way before the beginning. So we have never had problems with lead, but we do have problems with Scott Smith tested our water and said we have some of the highest TTHMs and chloroform of any of the homes in Flint, and it's very dangerous, especially in warmer weather. It's really the bacteria that we have to be concerned about.
Camryn, how'd you feel about your family deciding to leave Flint and move to Ann Arbor?
Well, I believe that it was the best choice for our family, especially considering our health. My sisters and I were tested and had very high levels of lead in our bodies and in our hair, which is a sign of a long-term effect. And so it was definitely the right move for our family. Emotionally, it's been very difficult, but I wouldn't do anything differently if I had the chance.
What grade were you in when you moved? Where were you in school? At what point were you in school when you had to make the move?
Oh, I was a junior in high school going into my senior year.
Oh boy, so you had to move. And I'm especially just thinking of high school, that senior year is so big, you build up to that. I get the feeling that if it hadn't have been for the water, you would have rather stayed in Flint.
Oh yes, especially because I attended Genesee Early College, which had a 5th year program, and so I was not expecting to graduate so early. I was expecting to have a 5th year of high school, which really sped up life for me, having to basically, apply to colleges out the gate, do a bunch of research. So what do I want to be for the next 40 years of my life? I need to know tomorrow so I can tell these colleges. It's just not something I planned on knowing.
Tell me, how has it been living in Ann Arbor and settling into Ann Arbor?
It has been such a pleasure. It's been a break. I heard Senator Ann Nick mention Flint fatigue. There's no such thing as that in Ann Arbor. Everything is very clean. Everyone is very pleasant. There's just a very general vibe of health and happiness that you don't get to experience in Flint. And it's a luxury, really. It's so nice that when we come back, we almost feel down, like, wow, this is how we used to live all the time. Living in Ann Arbor, we don't have to worry about simple, basic rights like water. There's not always the urge to keep your guard up and feel like, you know, someone's trying to come after you or someone's trying to do something to you or harm you, which is very, very fatiguing.
Yeah, see, as the senator said, it's like the stress that is just on everyone's shoulders.
People in Genesee County have like the highest blood pressure levels. It's like ridiculous because they're just so stressed out.
I'm wondering what it was like to have this thing that you were living through being written about and talked about and shown to the world, and there you were right in the middle of that. What was that like for you, Laura?
Well, it was validating at first because it had taken so long to get the public aware of the extent of the atrocities that were being committed by our government, and it just infuriates me to hear a description of Ann Arbor, being such a great place to live, which is where Governor Snyder lives, who is the one who is responsible and who needs to be in jail as we speak at this minute for what he's done to our city, and the fact that he is walking around with immunity. We're paying for his criminal defense lawyers and his public relations firms. We're actually paying more money for that than we are to actually fix the pipes and fix the situation in Flint, and it angers me. It angers me. So I feel vindicated that, there's been attention, that I'm glad you came back because, it's 3 years, 4 years that we've been living on bottled water. And like I said, people have died from Legionnaires. We're worried about the water, the warm weather. We're worried about more people dying, more people are sick. And, it still has not been addressed. The pipes have not been replaced. The situation is not fixed, and the water is getting worse.
What about you, Camryn? This was quite an education for you in watching news covering something that you knew very well.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
I agree that it was very validating, but it was also kind of made me feel like a fish in a glass bowl because everyone wanted to know, what do you think about the water? And I think at some point it kind of seemed like I was more of a spokesperson for the situation than I was a person that was actually living and breathing and bathing in and, washing my clothes in with this water, which was, very tiring. Still to this day, when people hear that I'm from Flint, the first question they ask is, how's the water? It's like, poison.
And yet we aren't seeing Flint on the national news or the international news as much, and we hear declarations from the EPA that things are going within standards, quote unquote. And people might think, well, things are getting back to normal in Flint. And what do you say when you hear that?
I get pretty enraged because it's not true, and I think that people forget that the news only covers what's hot, and so they've already done all their crying and pleading about Flint. They're done with the situation until something bigger and better happens, and that's it for them. But there's still people living here. There's still people, using 6 bottles of water to cook a pot of pasta, and it's enraging that people could, dismiss that just because that's what the media is telling them. You would think that maybe humanity, there'd be a bit more humanity there.
Yeah, it's absolutely enraging, and it's I'm sitting here now after having attended the same town hall that Bilal was speaking of on Thursday, where 6 people were arrested for not wearing hats and for asking questions and expressing some of their outrage about the water conditions, and I'm just furious right now. I'm sitting here just still wondering why nothing is getting done except a lot of public relations spin, and it's just very, very frustrating. And we're tired of being lied to. And as recently as Thursday night, we're absolutely sick and tired of being lied to. We're done.
Who do you feel is still doing the lying?
Well, it goes from all levels. It goes from the EPA, from the health officials. I mean, we're still being told it's safe to take showers in the water. It is not safe. We're still being told that the water is safe to drink with a filter. That is not true. The water actually, in some houses, is even worse with a filter because of the bacteria. Not all houses have even been tested yet. So how can they say the water's safe when all of the houses haven't been tested? And it's not just lead. There's just a focus on lead, but there's, we actually are, demanding that we get made whole again, that we have Medicare or Medicaid coverage for everyone, not just for people up to the age of 21. We have people who are sick, who are dying, who are suffering, and it's just not getting addressed.
How has this changed, or has this changed, the way you think about Flint?
It really has changed the way I think about Flint. When I think about, my childhood and coming up, Flint is my home. And it's, all I really know, all I'm really familiar with. But now living in Ann Arbor, when I think about Flint, it's more like something I escaped. I kind of feel like a refugee, which I think is a very powerful thing to say, considering that, there's still people here and it's not considered dangerous to anyone else, which is, ridiculous. And I think that in my mind, I don't feel like there's much left for Flint. I feel like, the people on the upper levels have really kind of left the people here just to their own devices. I mean, I don't want to say to die, but that's what's happening. And it's really heartbreaking because you don't want to think of your home as some place that can't be repaired, especially a place where you know that your grandparents and your friends and your teachers, all your loved ones still live as like, some wasteland. But that's what it seems like Flint is turning into.
And it's not that it can't be repaired. It absolutely can be repaired. It's not being repaired. And that's what's so frustrating, is that there's just an absolute lack of humanity. Water is a human right. We're being told that water is not a human right. We're having our Great Lakes sold to Nestle for $200. It's right now the contract is up. They want to take out more of our Great Lakes water, and we're just giving it to them. It's just infuriating. It's very, very frustrating.
What's the one thing, we're talking to so much of the state when you're here on stateside. What's the most important thing that you want people elsewhere in Michigan to understand about the people who are here in Flint, about the people of Flint?
I would say that people in Flint are resilient. This isn't the first catastrophe our city has had, but you still see smiles. You still see, kids having fun. You still see the programs that happen at schools and that happen